I've told the folks towards the bottom of the list that it's going to be difficult to reach them all today. We do have the room reserved again tomorrow. Cindy, what time is it? 2 o'clock? 2 o'clock tomorrow if we don't reach everything on the agenda today, provided that we decide to take action. I'm going to try to hear everything we can today. There's a possibility that we may not meet tomorrow and may meet Thursday. We're just going to have to kind of see how the calendar all plays out. But for now, Representative Smith, I want to welcome you, apologize to you that we didn't reach you last meeting, that we were a little overly optimistic on our agenda that day as well. Got bogged down in the COAM, but we have completely heard everybody that wanted to be heard on that COAM Bill 544. So I'm going to hear from you. In your folders, committee members, you're going to have on the top the pink version of House Bill 449, LC 364612. Representative Smith passed this bill out of the House, and he is going to speak to it first, and we'll allow speakers to just hold their peace till after we've also heard from Chairman Tippins, who will be presenting the Senate subcommittee substitute, which is LC 364835S. It only has a couple of changes from yours, as I'm able to distinguish here, and then we'll let you speak to it as well, your views, and we'll have anybody in the hall signed up that wants to speak to the issue as a whole. Fair enough?
Yes, sir.
All right, let's hear it.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I bring to you House Bill 449. This is a Georgia Utilities Coordinating Council group that consists of utility companies, excavation companies, local governments, GDOT, PSC, some 16 members. These people started meeting, this group started meeting back in June. Some 50 people attended these meetings. And what they're doing, of course, safety is the #1 issue when people are out digging, putting in utilities, relocating utilities, and so safety is very, very important. Another reason for the bill, we try to stay in front of the federal government. We want to make sure we maintain control of permitting and locating lines and dealing with all our utilities in the state of Georgia. So I think that's a very, very important point right there, that we don't want the feds coming in and taking over our job. We want to do our job to the utmost, and that's what we've been doing in the years past, and it's been working very well. These members started meeting last June. They started hammering out issues that they would like to include in House Bill 449. They met all the way till this past January, and this piece of legislation are all the items that they agreed upon through all these meetings. Now, you take those 16 and they come together and they agree on it, we put it in this bill. There are items they don't agree upon, and we know there are 2 or 3 items. Those items are going to be looked at through a subcommittee in the House side. Chairman Parsons appointed a subcommittee from his committee, and we've already had an organizational meeting. I'm an ex officio on that since I'm not on his committee, and we're going to look at the issues that they don't agree on this fall and see if we can't come up with a compromise and come back next year with that. In this bill that you have before you, there are like 4 main areas. One of them is blasting, and they've decided to allow from 24 hours to go to 48 hours of locating and studying the blasting, and so that gives a little bit more time. A second item is if a gas line or some hazardous material liquid pipeline is struck, they're to immediately call 911 to make sure they've got the safety factor involved. They're also on the statute of limitations when something goes wrong, and the PSC agreed to this. Now, they're not taking a position on this bill, but they agreed to a 3-year period of statute of limitations that you could go back and warranty the work. And extraordinary circumstances is the 4th area that's in the bill. That deals with utilities that are damaged when you have a tornado, a storm of some kind, even COVID that we're in this past year, floods, ice, any form of act of God. So that's in the bill also. I think the overall message is we as House and Senate members, over the years, we deal with a lot of different organizations, and we're almost like the arbitrator that tries to bring these people together to make sure they work out their legislation. In this instance, you've got 16 organizations that came together from the last 6, 7 months, then came to us, and they're all in agreement with the language of 449, which, boy, I like that way instead of having to be the arbitrator. And then they understand that there are issues that they'll have to confront and they have to debate, and those are the ones we're going to look at in the subcommittee that was appointed by Chairman Parsons. So that's the overall, keep us in the forefront, let Georgia maintain control of what we're doing in the utility business and the relocation business, and keep the feds away from taking over our jobs. So I'll stop right there. Any questions, I'll be glad to answer, or I'll turn it over to whomever.
We'll go ahead and see if anybody has questions for you now, but don't leave the room. Anybody got anything? Senator Ginn, you look froggy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Said I'm going to jump on it. Said one of the things that for me, appreciate you bringing the bill to us. Said I know you're trying to help stay out in front of the feds. If for some reason this bill didn't pass this year and it passed next year, what would that do, if anything, to that relationship?
Well, it does have a section in the bill that if the, somebody hits a line, and I can pull up the, I guess I can. I got so many copies of the bills up here now, but I can't say whether the feds would come in between now and next year because Georgia's in the forefront. But it's something that they've worked on for 7 months, and they brought to us as a group of some 16 organizations. And I'd hate to wait.
I'm assuming that's unlikely then, for the feds to jump out there and do that.
I can't answer that. Yes,
Okay.
that'd be.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. Any other members have questions? All right. Senator Lucas, the owner of Luke's Lounge. Back in the day.
Representative, what were the things that y'all couldn't agree on that y'all decided to get together and try to work out?
The biggest issue is signalization that's buried in the ground on like traffic signals and the lines that are buried in the ground. That's one of the biggest issues that they couldn't come to a compromise on. So they agreed to go with this bill and put that into a committee, study committee of sorts, and try to hammer that out over the interim.
So in other words, all the folks in this particular organization agreed to 449, and what they couldn't agree to, they're gonna study it and see if they can come up with a compromise on it.
Yes, sir, exactly.
Other questions by committee members? All right, my good sweet mate, Senator Harbison, let's see what you got.
You mentioned something about, did I understand you mentioned something about lightning strikes?
Acts of God, so I'd consider that one.
Yeah, what was the context of that? I just heard it and I didn't find it in the bill.
There's a section in the bill that deals with extraordinary circumstances, and in that list of things under that would be an act of God, a storm, tornado.
How is that cured? Is that to bear the brunt of the consumer in those cases? For instance, lightning hit the equipment or something like that. Is that the context of it? Or?
Well, it's dealing strictly with underground utilities.
only.
Yes, sir.
I just want that clarified.
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much.
Yes, sir.
Any other questions from committee members? Senator Gooch.
Former Commissioner Smith, as a board member of GDOT, didn't we have this conversation a lot of times? And you would always say it's about those 11 million people outside that window right there. That was 9.5 back then, I stand corrected.
Mr. Chairman, Ruth's chairman's right. It was 9.5 back then. I did point out the window a lot. Yeah, we try to look after the people.
Thank you for working on this. We'll look forward to helping you.
Thank you. Yes, sir. Appreciate it.
All right, other questions for the author from the House? Minority Leader, you seem like you're a little anxious.
No,
Go ahead,
I'm good.
rip into them, go have at it.
No, I think I'll leave him as is.
Thank you.
All right, sure he appreciates that. All right, thank you, Representative Smith. If you'll hang with us in the room for a little bit, that'd be great right over there. I'm gonna
Thank you, Mr.
let
Chairman.
Chairman Tippins present the committee sub. This is in the folder as well. As we mentioned, it's LC 364835S. If you don't mind going to the podium so we can get you on TV. People in the hall want to see the author.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I think the work that's been done so far on 449 probably addresses 4 areas that need addressing. While it's true that this committee's been meeting for 7 months, the problem that I think needs to be addressed in this is the fact that the underground signalization cables have been excluded thus far in all the underground utility mandate bills since the very inception of the call before you dig laws. Now, I remember when call before you dig laws were put into effect. When I started in business in 1969, there was no call before you dig because there was very little underground service where we were. Where there was service and you knew there was service, you'd call the utility and they'd may or may not come out. And because of the need of a reliable locate service, call before you dig law came into effect. It really was motivated by a gas explosion in Hapeville, Georgia that blew up a daycare center, killed several people in it. An excavator was on site and hung it with a loader and pulled it out of the building. It exploded, and that was what really brought to the forefront the need for call before you dig. The landscape today is much different than it was 25 or 30 years ago when this was first approached, because there's so much more that's underground today. And under current law, every utility that's in the shoulder of a public right-of-way, to the best of my knowledge, is mandated that it be located before you dig other than signal cables for traffic lights. Clearly, when the call before you dig was instituted, the reason it was put there, number one, was for public safety, but it was also put there to prevent the public from being inconvenienced by loss of service. Now, when they cut a water line in front of your house, you don't have water until somebody can fix it. If they cut a gas line, you hope it doesn't blow up, but you obviously don't have gas service. So much of this is underground now, it's imperative that all utilities be located. I don't know how many of y'all have ever sat in traffic on a busy highway and not known why traffic was backed up, especially if you were on a multi-lane road and it crossed another multi-lane road, say 2 state highways, and you get up there and you find out that somebody has cut the underground signal cables that control the traffic lights. And when that happens, those cars all have to come and they try to go through one at a time and alternate, and everybody tries to be friends and nice and all. But it creates a terrible backup of traffic anytime you have a disruption of signal cables. Not only that, they're very expensive to fix. And the problem that I face as an underground utility contractor is we can call 811 and we can have everything located in public right-of-ways with the exception of buried cables. This is not, that are traffic cables. This is not a 7-month problem. They've been talking about this for 25 years, and all along they've said, no, traffic signalization is going to be exempted from it. I can tell you firsthand, they're proud of those when you have to pay for them. We have to dig in the right-of-way, but we don't know where it is. And when you don't know where it is, you don't know where not to dig. And so when you cut them, they say, well, you've cut our cable. And so they'll send you a bill for them. I know that firsthand.
Has your subcommittee solved the problem that they've been working on for 7 months?
Our subcommittee, I think, made some recommendations for a substitute, and I have added another one from the substitute of the committee, and this is reflected in LC 364835S. These changes are very simple, and I'll go through them. If you'll turn to page 8. If you look on line 196, it adds to underground or submerged conductors a definition of utility facility. It adds as a B section a traffic control device or a traffic management system. If you go down to page 198, The existing language was, the term does not include traffic control devices, traffic management systems, or sewer laterals. All sewer, on these, what the first major change that happened was, we put traffic control devices in traffic management systems and classified them as a utility facility, which they clearly are. The only other change we made in this was on page 21, line 529. We did 2 exemptions on this. The first was for railroad facilities. I can tell you from firsthand experience, you do not go on a railroad right-of-way and start digging without permission, and you have to have a set of plans, and the railroad will locate everything they have on the right-of-way. They need to be cut out because these are private right-of-ways. This is like telling somebody, you know, you can't do this or you have to do this on your own land. This is their property, or property that they have long-term leases on from the state of Georgia, but the utilities that are on that belong to the railroad. And by law, there's 3 classes of people that can go on property. There's an invitee, there's a licensee, and there's a trespasser. And basically, by law, if you're on the railroad right-of-way, you're a trespasser. That's the reason they have their own police forces. I don't quibble with that because the running of the railroads are important. So we cut the railroad facilities out in this bill, lines 30 and 31. We exempted them from this because if you're on railroad right-of-way digging, you're going to have a permit. You're going to have their approval for being there. Secondly, in lines 533 through 539, I'm sure you can read, but it's very short. I'm going to read it and I will explain it. Notwithstanding any other provision of this chapter, the marking of the locations of any traffic control devices or traffic management facilities operated by the Department of Transportation shall be provided for by the Department of Transportation. Any request for the marking of such locations shall be submitted using either a single telephone number or an email contact address, both of which shall appear on any construction plans or permits issued by the Department of Transportation to any entity seeking permission to perform underground construction on a right-of-way of the Department of Transportation. This is language that the Department of Transportation asked to be put in the bill because they have specifically asked to be excluded from the 811 number, or from the 811 locate system. But they've provided a statewide one-call number. Anywhere you're on a state right-of-way, you call them because they wanted to reserve unto themselves the responsibility of locating their facilities. Now, they have the right to go ahead and subcontract this out to a locator if they want to. It's up to them, but it's their responsibility. So in doing this, we'll guarantee that anybody digging in a right-of-way other than a railroad right-of-way can have all utilities located before they ever put a piece of equipment in the ground. I'll say this, in the counties that we work in, we have to have land disturbance permits issued by the county and a set of plans that are approved, and in doing that, they have to approve our being even on the road right-of-way. And you know, I remember back when the Call Before You Dig law first came out, it only applied to gas lines, and then they took in telephone cables and then other cables. But right now, the counties and utilities are already, the counties and cities are locating water lines, sewer lines, gas lines if they have a gas service, electric lines if they have an electric system, or any fiber or cable that they may have underground. All this is already being located. But if there happens to be a signal cable that's a county cable, they're going to have to locate it. But they're already going to have people out there because they're going to have to locate everything else. If you've got an intersection that you've got enough people, you need a traffic light, you've got underground utilities.
All right, so let me catch you up here. So the DOT obviously is responsible for a lot of the signalization cables that are underground, right?
That's correct.
And they are in agreement that this protects them and the
They are
utilities
in
contractors?
agreement.
So this requires them to mark on the plans.
No, they mark on the ground. You call them at this one call number. They come out and physically mark on the ground. All locations, marks on a plan's not any good because the utility law provides for a certain window that you have to
Okay.
dig.
So
on
they
either
mark
side.
them and they have to give you a telephone number, an email address to use. to
Yeah,
come
they
request.
they give you a number on every permit they issued. That contact number will be on
So
it.
if you call them, they have to come out and locate.
Absolutely.
But they don't have to participate in the 811 system because they're giving you a separate number upon request.
And that's statewide, and it'll cover any state highway in the state of Georgia.
All right? And so
And they requested that it be handled that way.
the railroad's okay, I'm sure, with you taking them out since they're private right-of-ways?
They asked me to do that.
All right, so who's that leave us with, the localities that might have some of the
Counties and
signalization?
cities that may have signal cable.
Do they already participate in that 811 system?
No, sir.
Okay. Does this require them to?
Yes, I mean, they'll be, well, what it requires is that these cables are to go into these facilities are termed utility facilities, and they have to be located. But all of them are already members of the 811 system.
Well, that's what I was just asking. You said they're not.
They're not required,
Okay.
but that scope of location is not required by law. They have to come out and locate water lines, they have to come out sewer lines,
All right.
gas lines.
I didn't mean to cut you off. Are you
I'm
you
done.
through?
I know
Okay.
you're
Senator
tight
Ginn-
on time. I'll
Senator-
hush.
Senator Ginn has a question.
I don't know that I have a question, but I do want
All right,
to
well,
let
let me know
Chairman
when you
make
get
sure
one.
we're on the right page here.
Okay.
The, any local government that contracts with DOT to maintain a traffic signal device is going to have membership in 811.
Okay.
And so, one of the things that to me, it's just a matter of the left hand knowing what the right hand is on this.
Does this substitute help the left hand know what the right hand's doing?
I think it does. And,
Okay. Good deal then. We're making good public policies. Senator Lucas.
Mr. Chairman, I'm trying to figure out, what are we doing that the group couldn't agree on, that we're putting in the bill?
Senator Tippins thinks he solved the problem of signalization cables for traffic signals that they couldn't figure out with their group by including these provisions he just highlighted with the DOT and the railroads and the location of the underground wiring and cables. The bill addressed all the other types of underground utilities and wiring and such before it got to them in the original, the way I understand it. Any other questions? I've got a few people signed up. Senator Mullis looks, he's maybe ready to pounce too.
I'm just excited about the enthusiasm that Senator Tippins has in trying to create traffic problems.
I have a lot of motivation,
You
Mr.
got those
Chairman.
problems up there in Chickamauga, the land of the great senator?
No, we don't have that much of a problem up there, but I know they do in Cobb, North Cobb, and everywhere around here.
Y'all got turn signals on your cars yet, or you still doing this
We
kind
do
of stuff?
that a lot, yeah,
Okay,
we do that a lot.
If I may, Mr. Chairman,
all right. Mr. Whip?
Just a quick question. First of all, Senator Lucas, what's changed in this bill is on 533, line 533 in that paragraph. That's why everybody now agrees with the sub. So the DOT's happy with this language on line 533 through 539.
You good with it as an ex-DOT?
Well, the question I'm asking is, what about the so-called group that they had,
I haven't heard
that
from.
they couldn't agree on, that they supposed to be working on,
This
that's all of a
is- this
sudden
is the
is
fix.
answered?
I believe
through
this
this.
fixes that, unless there's somebody else signed up. But I
We
wanted to
got
ask.
three people signed
I
up.
wanted to ask Senator Tippins a question.
All right.
Not to open this up to create a problem. Is there a time limit on how fast the DOT would have to respond to this, like under the
the
811
DOT
program?
will already respond if you call them.
I understand. I didn't know if you had that
The DOT
provision
will
on there.
call, but the problem is, mostly when you're dealing with county and municipal governments, is finding the person that's responsible to do it, because even in Cobb County, you can't call the main number, you have to call the Department of Transportation and get a hold of the person that does that.
Well,
It's very complicated.
Every set of plans will have that permit, that DOT permit.
Every set of plan
that the
DOT
is-
issues
that's
is gonna
right,
have
and
a
the number will
contact
be in
number
there.
on it.
So that'll take care of it. Good.
Let me say this.
All right, go right
I'm
ahead.
all
You got the
for
floor.
studying problems and solving them, But the bottom question, and the bottom line is, the question is, are you going to do it or are you not going to do it? This is something that needs to be done, and we don't need to wait a year to do it. Thank y'all. I appreciate your consideration.
All right, we've got a few people signed up. Mr. Rick Lund, Georgia Underground Contracting, somebody's chairman. I don't know what that other C is for, but you can educate us.
Excuse me there, the hearing aid's getting in the way. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman,
Good to have you
Senators.
here, Rick.
I am the chairman of the technical committee that worked on this bill since June of this year. So hopefully I can answer some of the questions that you've already asked and speak to those and also to the original bill. Just a little background is the Georgia Utility Coordinating Council. We're made up of the major utilities, the major excavators in the state, the major GDOT, the Georgia PSC, Georgia 811, basically the locators, everybody that works on putting these flags and paint out on the streets to keep everybody safe. So we have brought you updates to this statute 6 times that I can remember in the 30 years I've been involved here, and y'all have been gracious enough to take us on every time. We brought you consensus bills 5 out of those 6 times, and one other time we had the same issue. We had something we couldn't agree on, and we went through a study committee. So we brought you the same playbook, so to speak. There are 16 organizations, and I'm here to support 449 as originally proposed. As you can well imagine, getting 16 organizations and with more than 40 or 50 companies to agree was a challenge. Basically, I run meetings until they pass out. But in this regard,
You can say that again, Mr. Pro Tem.
I said, so does the chairman.
yeah, sorry. All right, this is important stuff, really it is. So, but let me say this. I mean, we have brought 2 issues here to the House, obviously for a study committee, that we can't agree on. They're much more complex than you've heard here today. It's not as simple as, yes, do you locate traffic control signals and traffic management systems, or no, you don't. I mean, there's a whole issue of who's going to do it, the city, the county, the GDOT. How do you deal with these issues? A matter of fact, the GDOT proposal that we've heard today, and mind you, GDOT is one of the 16 that agreed to 449, but now I guess that we're talking amendments, everybody has their thoughts. But if you go to line 233 of the existing law, 449, it says there shall be no duplicative center. There's one call center for the state of Georgia. What GDOT's doing is establishing, with their language, a second one call center. So the excavators get to call twice. Now, the excavators on the committee said, we don't like that. I mean, that's one of the reasons why we ended up in a study committee, because GDOT offered that up during discussion. So you'd be flying in the face of existing law with that. Let me skip to a couple other questions. The feds. The feds look at our one call law every year. They do a review over at the Georgia Public Service Commission. I've had the privilege of sitting in on some of those. And what the feds do is they're basically herding 50 states along and say, you know, they set the bar here and they're trying to get all 50 above the bar, and then they'll raise the bar and continue to make it better and better for the nation, because they really don't want to do it. Do the feds do state enforcement? Yes, they do. They are 10 states in the nation that currently are not considered effective. Alabama's one of them, right next door. Alaska is one of them. The first enforcement by the feds started up there just in the last few months, because they just took on enforcement authority. And instead of a Georgia law where an excavator typically gets fined $1,500 or a utility gets fined $1,500, the feds can fine up to $2 million. So we certainly want to keep them out of the business if we can. And it is a legitimate concern. Now, will they do it between this year and next year? Probably not, if they know that we have the study committee out here to address the issues that are remaining. Because one of the things they really do get their teeth into is exemptions, right? We have been very fortunate. Our law, we had done a good job of not having organizational exemptions. That's the first thing they look for, right? So Senator Tippins's proposal will shine a bright light on Georgia because we're giving the railroads an organizational exemption, right? In the past, they just weren't covered under the scope of the bill, and that worked for the feds. But
How's that any different than giving them exemption if they're not covered by the bill?
well, it's just different in the way the feds look at it. I hate to say, that's just that was their number one on their list. Any organization that's exempt by definition, and in most states, a majority of the states, the DOTs are one of those. They want that changed because, in fact, PHMSA, the pipeline safety portion of the federal government that looks at all of this stuff, is part of the DOT. They're ashamed that their own organizations aren't members of the One Call Center, but they understand it takes time. So hence the study committee in that regard, because it is complex. There are traffic signals sitting in the middle of Marietta, Buford, wherever you want, that GDOT does, and the next slide over is done by the city or the county, right? The permits may go to the city, but the facilities may be GDOT. So, I mean, it's not as simple as, yes, you're going to do it. A couple other things, and then I'll get out of your way, certainly. Extraordinary circumstances. Let me speak to that. Extraordinary circumstances, just so you all understand, is what happens. The law is quite direct. You got 2 days starting at 7 o'clock the next morning to get the locate done. And occasionally, a hurricane whips through Georgia or tornadoes or whatever, or in this case, COVID shut down certain utilities for extended periods of time. And so what it says is, if you had a tornado come through or a hurricane or something like that, and you can't put the paint on the ground, you can declare extraordinary circumstances. And so that sets off a set of rules for the excavators not to dig in the short term, but how to dig in the long term if somebody doesn't get their locates done. So it's a process that we put in to address the longer term. Nobody ever envisioned a COVID epidemic when we did the extraordinary circumstances 10 years ago. Right, we expected short term, 3 days, 4 days, that kind of thing. Now we're dealing with something that's gone for a year, and that's where we're at. So with that, I guess I'll conclude my comments unless anybody has questions I can answer on the bill.
Well, where I'm puzzled is that you represent the underground utilities contractors, right? And there's a whole bunch of different types of them?
No, Mr. Chairman. I actually work for Southern Company Gas. I'm a gas
okay.
pipeline safety director for Southern Company Gas. Been with Atlanta Gas Light and in Southern Company Gas for 35 years. I'm the chairman of the committee, just trying to bring everybody together, if that makes sense, since GUCZ is a nonprofit of all of those organizations I referenced before, just to work on this and other
All of
right
those organizations generally have to dig in the ground to do their jobs, right?
Yes, sir.
So they want to know where they're digging and they're not going to hit somebody's line, whatever it might be. Your gas people's lines, these signals, cable, whatever's running under there, right?
I am very sympathetic
Okay.
to it. We're one of the biggest excavators in the state at Atlanta Gas Light.
So what it sounds to me like y'all have reached a partial solution to the problem. You got a study committee trying to finally solve it, and you're trying to get us to approve a partial solution. Chairman Tippins thinks he's solved the rest of your puzzle for you now. I mean, why would y'all want a bill that you don't have everybody happy? Just you're afraid those other 16 going to break ranks and change their mind if we don't go ahead and lock it down now?
Well, let me speak to that, Mr. Chairman. As I said, in all the years we've brought you bills, we've brought consensus bills. And GUCC is based on consensus.
Okay.
If we're not talking to each other, if we're not in agreement, we don't want to be down
But
here.
if we legislate only by consensus, well, heck, it's things we don't even need to legislate.
Well-
People have worked out their deals and don't need laws to govern their relationships essentially, right? I mean, if you guys work it all out, you don't need us to pass a law.
Well, now, you always need the law because there's the choir singers and then there's the ones who won't come into church.
All right, well, I got a couple of singers out there. Todd Edwards, ACCG. Thank you, and don't get too far away, Rick. We may want you back.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
He's against his own bill. Yeah. I think so.
Good day, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I'm Todd Edwards. I'm the Deputy Legislative Director with the Association of County Commissioners of Georgia. I did hear a good bit of the testimony prior to me, so I won't try to repeat anything. As mentioned, ACCG, the Georgia Municipal Association, my colleague Tom Gell, we were a member of the GUCC Legislative Committee that participated in this compromise over a several-month period, many hours spent. many stakeholders involved. Coming out of that, I believe the question was earlier, what were the two disagreements? One you focused on is whether or not traffic control devices and traffic management systems should be, in fact, utility facilities. And the other one that was there that we couldn't reach agreement on is whether or not to give more time for locates. The current law is 48 hours, up to 72 hours. We discussed various compromises on the traffic control devices management systems. None of them were accepted by the group. So we have reached out. We understand the issues, particularly with management systems. Just so you all know, those are more often in metro areas, cables interconnecting the traffic control devices throughout the city. What we have with traffic control devices are signs, posts, and as you can see the definition in the statute in front of you, and both the lights, the signs, the posts, and that would impact every county in the state. So by naming these or calling them, and I'll just sum it up, utility facilities. Later in the section, utility facility owners have to become members of the 811 Center. They pay their annual dues. They have to hire additional staff and locators, and part of the discussion was a shortage of locators. That's the 72-hour discussion. They'll have to locate those traffic signs, posts, signals, and management systems within 48 hours of a call.
Is that the current law or something that's in this bill?
That's the current law.
Okay.
The only thing that's not in this bill, and I'm sorry I didn't see who asked the question, I'd address them, is that this does not apply to both the control devices and management systems. I clearly understand, and I think the other side has better arguments on management systems, but bringing in control devices brings in everyone, every part of the state, no matter how rural they are, paying dues, members, responding to false locates. That's what we primarily had issues with at ACCG. The current process in both of these is if it was mentioned earlier that railroads require permits to work in their right-of-way. So do counties, the vast majority, or more developed counties. At that point, as they're not part of this formal response system, the only one allowed by state law, that they would, during the permitting process, get out and mark their own utilities. We agreed to a few compromises. We're willing to work both during the study committee and as this was developing with Senator Tippin's proposed changes to the bill. We have not reached agreement. We supported the study committee in the House. We would like to continue working with them. We ask that you favorably consider the original bill and not the Tippin's, and I forget Senator Tippin's amendment, subcommittee substitute. Tom?
Hold on.
Yes.
You got a question, Vice Chairman, Senator Brass, the Banking Committee Chairman. Funds all this construction.
The illustrious banking
My bad,
chairman.
excuse me.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Edwards, thanks for being here. So if the main concern is your rural counties having to be dues-paying members, is there some suggested language to get around that?
We had worked on several suggestions, but there was, remember, so you're darned if you do and darned if you don't on consensus. We understood the issue. We had proposals addressed on that, couldn't get agreement for everyone, but we were willing to work. The other concern was, and I can stop answering your question, but another thing we reached out to was why should they be liability if we don't locate our facilities and they damage them? And we fully agreed that they shouldn't be liable. We had kicked around language on that, but again, and with this group, we're not negotiating on behalf of ACCG, but negotiating on what everyone else would accept. Not reaching those agreements, that's why we suggested fully support and would look forward to working with the study committee. With the legislature over us, we know that we have to act, or, you know, it's going to happen one way or another, but that's where we were on that, sir.
All right, so the underlying bill doesn't impact you guys, so you're happy to postpone a decision.
The underlying bill impacts everyone.
How about you, ACCG? Does it impact county government?
Not as far as traffic management systems and traffic control devices are concerned. It does not.
Okay.
The substitute does.
All right, and the underlying bill, were y'all the squeaky wheel that wouldn't agree that kicked it down the road to a study committee? Or?
No, we fully supported a study committee.
All right, so well, I know you support that. That's called the four corners defense. You stall. You put it off till next session. But so there was a part you guys couldn't reach agreement on with this group of 16.
It wasn't quite stalling. It was not agreeing to the terms that were proposed, as you see in the substitute. We did not stall on we kicked around a lot of language on delaying the implementation, the costs, being liable for others. So I would not classify it as an all-out stalling. It was not coming to agreement with totally jumping in and having those defined as utility facilities, Mr. Chairman, sir.
Gotcha. Okay, any other questions? Mr. Pro Tem?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So how much of the agreement, of the total substance, did y'all come to an agreement on? And is there half of it left, or is there 10% left? And I understood that all the members had signed an agreement or a pledge or some kind of Boy Scout oath that they wouldn't violate this the bill in its current form. Where are y'all on that? I mean, how much more is left?
We're fully supportive of the bill in its form before the amendment was added. And if I understood your question, what percentage of the overall discussion did we not address?
Yes.
10%.
10%.
I mean, out of, if there were 20
So
issues,
you came to an
2%.
agreement on 90% of it, and you want a study committee for the other 10?
Approximately, give or take. I mean, I would say
Yeah,
it's
I understand.
less than that,
Yeah,
maybe
yeah.
5%.
Okay.
Yeah, we came in good faith, spent many hours, did what we could.
But all these
again,
folks agreed not to violate it and not to change it.
we certainly agreed. It was my understanding the others had, but I couldn't speak for those other associations. I can say what we agreed to in the group was to stick by this language and work on the less than 10% of the issues on which there could not be discussion, or a compromise, or agreement, excuse me.
All right. Thank you. Tom Gale. GMA.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I'm Tom Gale with the Georgia Municipal Association. Along with the other 15 organizations, GMA supports the original consensus House Bill 449 that was fully vetted by the Georgia Utilities Coordinating Council. This issue had extensive review during that GUCC process that began in early summer, and GMA was able to support the bill due to the exemptions remaining in law. We do know that there are concerns about this exemption, but our position is that let's fully vet those concerns in an open process and in an attempt to, again, come back next year and bring a consensus on the solution, a process that can work for facility owners and for excavators. And I would respectfully ask that this committee support House Bill 449 as it got to this body.
All right. Senator Lucas has a question for you.
How do one, I call it digger, find the management system for that deals with the traffic lights in? If it's not on the thing, how do they find it?
That's such an easy question. If the chairman's indulgence, I'll let Todd Edwards explain it.
We've been watching you, Mr. Chairman. That sounded familiar.
It would, the traffic management systems are usually in larger, more metro urban counties with professional highway department public works staff. You have to have a permit in those counties to work within the right-of-way. As part of that permitting process, the DOT, the roads department public works staff would locate it. And if not, then we fully agree that, you know, an excavator should not be liable. That was part of the discussions. If they strike it and we as a county fail to locate it, I understand that argument that they've put forward.
So there is a way without this substitute.
There is a way.
Define the management system, and if they can't get a hold to the folks, and they go over there and dig it and dig up the cable, they're not responsible for it.
They shouldn't be, and that's what we tried to compromise, but again, that language was not agreed to by the whole group, and thus we have the study committee. I hate to say what Rick did, but it is complicated. We can't, as part of that group, we can't compromise in a vacuum, as I think others may have put forward through an amendment to an amendment today. But through that process, that was not accepted, but we understand and we're willing to continue working on that.
Senator Rett.
This question is directed to both you and Senator Tippins. Based on his questioning, do you find that lends Senator Tippins to be the case, and is that an easy remedy?
It's really not an easy remedy because the locates, you have many more city and county roads than you have state roads. And the cities and counties are already sending locate people out there on the job. I mean, there's no reason they couldn't all not be able to locate that. They have the data records on all of this maintained within the county. The biggest problem you have is contacting people within some cities and counties to come out. They may have one single phone, but they may not be anybody answering that phone, or there may only be one person that handles that, and he's on vacation for a week. The issue is, it all goes back to the liability. You know, who's going to be liable for it? And it's easy to talk about when you don't ever have to do it. But I'll tell y'all, I've been digging up cables for 50 years. It's not an easy job. I applaud the fact that we've tried to go to a one-call system, but I also realize the situation with the Georgia DOT is a little bit different. You know, if you can get a hold of them, they'll come locate. But most of the time, I won't say most of the time, I'll say many times, it's hard to get a hold of.
And I would respond to that. What we've heard was the biggest concern was the liability. Once the bill was amended in subcommittee, we all got into action. ACCG was willing to go with language that said, if that's in fact the case, you're out there, we've been notified through the permitting process, then we're not liable if y'all hit it. We, in good faith, again, not stalling, Mr. Chairman, but that was not agreed to by the full GUCC Legislative Committee. I mean, we're
I
not.
don't get where everybody thinks that we're bound by what some outside.
No, we're
people
not,
agree
but I
to.
mean, that's, if we're going through that process, of which we did in this case, I agree, I see that, I understand that point. Oftentimes, we're asked to come up trying to find a compromise, but when we're going through that group,
If Senator Gooch wanted to come up with a bill that solved all these problems, or Senator Tippins, we could do that without even consulting you guys and let you
you're absolutely
just
right.
testify here and tell us how we messed it up.
You're absolutely right, Mr. Chairman. With working with that group, we agreed to work through them, but I understand that entirely and had not gone beyond that when these things were being discussed. I just say that to say, I bring that up to state that we were trying to work in good faith to try solutions to what is a real problem.
All right, good deal. Yep, and then I'm running out of
I
time.
want to
Killing other
clarify,
bills.
I think other people may want to hear this too. In the original bill that Representative Smith has here, does this require the local governments to be a part of the Call Before You Dig program? And are you paying into it under the original bill?
It requires local governments who own water, sewer.
Forget the water part.
No,
So the traffic lines are not part of the bill. They're
traffic, the specific definitions are traffic control devices online. Of the original bill, it's in your definitions, 34 and
It's
35.
in the definitions, but-
Traffic control devices,
right.
traffic management systems.
But does it require the locals to go out and locate by calling the Call Before You Dig number? Was it 511? Is that the number?
Under current law and the originally proposed bill, we are not required to do that through the UPC.
And that's because these contractors are already on your right-of-way, and you should already have issued them a permit to be there?
That's one of the arguments I've tried to make here today, Senator.
And under the proposed sub that Senator Tippins has, you would now be required to go out, or at least provide that telephone number, is that right?
Everyone with signs, sign structures, signals, and associated infrastructure, which is every county, would have to pay to become a member, respond to locates, true and false, the list goes
So
on.
that's the
Yes, sir.
difference. The DOT only has to have the phone number on the plans or provided.
I had not seen that language nor the amendment that's been
The counties don't have that
proposed.
requirement that he's going to basically let the DOT have that privilege.
That could've-
You're still going to be under the other privilege of having to pay in. Is that your objection?
Okay, I'm not familiar. I heard discussion on a DOT proposal today. I've never seen it. I imagine from the discussion that they've got, trying to establish a separate line. So with that, I can't comment for DOT and what they're trying to do. I just hadn't seen that language before,
I think
Senator.
there's some confusion, but I'm beginning to clear it myself anyway, so.
All right, other questions? Okay, then the
Thank you.
committee substitute is under consideration now. Anybody, either Senator Tippins or Representative Smith, want to close quickly? Okay, go right ahead.
Thank you.
You know, I guess I go back to what I said in the original statement. and it was mentioned sometimes, several times, Mr. Chairman, about a consensus among a group. I consider that an advantage when you have groups that work together. They come to us to update their code to stay out at the forefront so that the feds don't get involved. I consider that a plus. And this group got together, these 16 people, for 6-7 months. They worked. They came up with language that they all agreed upon. They spent a lot of hours doing that. And guess what? Out of all the things they talked about, there are a couple of things they couldn't agree to. So rather than stop the motion of the things they do agree upon, they put it in motion, and we've got it in Bill 449. Each one of those 16 members sent a letter, and each one of them signed the letter, the name of the company that they're with, that they're in agreement. And as the pro tem said, yes, there was an agreement. What I understand, there was an agreement that they would stick to the deal that they made, all the agreements that they made in those meetings of 6 or 7 months, and they would stick to that, and that's what we have in 449. The things they couldn't, that's what we're going to look at over the interim. So I consider that a plus personally for me as a state rep. Instead of having to be the arbitrator and decide what's best for them, they brought it to us. I mean, they saved us a lot of work right there, in my opinion now. So that's the reason I say let's pass that bill. Let's pass 449 and respectfully ask that, and then we'll look at this other. And we've already had a organizational meeting from those members that Chairman Parsons appointed, and we're ready to go to work and help them solve those issues, hear testimony and help them solve. So certainly appreciate your time. Let me come back up.
Senator Tippins, you can speak from where you sit if you got anything to add.
As I said earlier, I think it's pretty simple. Does this need to be simplified and streamlined on the location of all utilities within public right-of-ways? I think it ought to be. They want to study it more. I don't think there's anything to study, to be honest with you.
All right.
If I will say this, if there are counties that do not have, I mean, if they need to be, if they're being mandated to join the 811 system because they have signposts in the county, that should not be a mandate if they don't have underground utilities.
Okay. About to lose my quorum here. I recognize Senator Mullis for a motion.
Yes, I'd like to move to pass Senator Tippins' amendment or
So that's
committee sub.
LC 364835S. Is there a second? Second. Second by Senator Ginn. Any discussion on that?
Chairman.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to
Senator
delay
Gooch.
this at all, honestly, but I'm still confused between the two bills. I know what they say, but I'm afraid that adopting this sub from Senator Cowsert, or from Senator Tippins, is going to put a huge burden on the local governments that they haven't fully described yet. Can there be a way to table this till tomorrow? Give you and Tippins time?
You could,
I'm not honestly, I'm not trying to delay it, but if we had a chance to hear from them a little bit more and articulate a little bit more about what this does, I'm afraid that this could have some issues dealing with it that we're not intending to do, so.
If you want to make that motion, but be wary, we may not be holding a meeting tomorrow.
Oh, I thought you said we were.
There's
I'm
one
sorry.
scheduled.
Okay.
I hadn't put out an agenda yet, and I'm waiting for a little instruction from people
And
like
I'm-
Pro Tem on that.
I'm not trying to kill.
Senator, but just be
the
aware
bill.
you may be.
Not trying to kill the bill either, the amendment. But the ACCG came in and spoke against this, and GMA came in here and spoke against the amendment. And I think we're much wiser when we let industries solve a problem and we codify it than we go out there and pick winners and losers. And I'd rather hear more from the local government before we make a decision if that's, so I would second your.
I would make a motion to
Motion to
table it. And if we'll have a meeting tomorrow, we're going to move the bill one way or the other, so everybody better get to work.
There's a motion and there's a second. Senator
Who's the
Mullis.
chairman of this committee?
No,
Senator Mullis, I reckon.
Senator Cowser, thank you for chairing this committee in such a divine way. And I wanted to say that I'm not against what they want to do, but I'd have to say that my friends at GMA and ACCG never want something new that would benefit the community that they think they may have to pay for. They don't pay for it anyway. It's the taxpayers of that community. And I think this may be the safety part that would be worth it. But I'd be glad to go along with the tabling if that suits the
You know,
chairman.
I learned something the other day. We did handle all those y'all's crazy motions to table and untable and reconsider and whatnot. The Secretary of the Senate said procedurally we handled it right, with the exception that motions to table are not debatable. So I just allowed you unintentionally to debate it, but your wisdom's always welcome in this committee, your divine wisdom, there, Mr. Chairman. And so we will take a vote on Senator Gooch's motion to table that's been seconded by President Pro Tem. All in favor of tabling the committee substitute to House Bill 449, raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and all opposed, like sign. 1, 2, 3. Got 4 against. All right, so it is tabled. And we will see if we can find time to further reconsider that bill this session. All right, I'm going to go slightly out of order. We're losing our quorum quickly. We are also going to lose this room pretty soon. I have Representative, I'm going to call now Representative Howard, House Bill 437. He was here patiently at our last meeting and didn't get reached. We're going to hear only his bill very quickly, House Bill 437. Can you get folks help Representative Howard get in here? While I'm doing that, our committee aide is passing out a photocopy of a sticker that the Department of Agriculture puts on gas pumps. And Commissioner Black asked me to hand these out to the committee today. He has edited his current sticker in a slight way to perhaps accommodate Representative Howard's concerns. And I just wanted y'all to have that, and we're going to hear about that. Looks fantastic. Let me get you turned on, Representative. I'm sorry for us not being able to reach you last week. It was just one of those things where we went on and on and on. But I wanted to hear everybody that had signed up to testify. So today I have you. I had promised you a hearing on your bill. If you'll just explain as briefly as possible to the committee what you accomplished with this and how you go about it, then we may have a question or two for you. And I got some suggestions.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Sure.
And to the committee for taking the time to.
We're working. This is deep in y'all's folders, and there is the last couple bills there. This is House Bill 437, LC 338690S. This is as passed the House, and there is a Senate research summary of it about self-service gasoline station attendants. All right, sir?
So this is really I don't know how the senators receive this, but a simple bill, and I think that's, in my opinion, that's what it is. And I must say that you don't run into things that folk with disabilities may have to encounter until you become a disabled person, and you begin understand and see things that they run into. And one thing that I ran into that caught my attention right away after my surgery and able to get back on the road was that the availability or accessibility of a person with a disability being able to get gas in their car if they are by themselves and traveling, or for me, traveling back from Augusta to Atlanta, and you low on gas and you've got to ask a stranger or someone that you don't know to assist you by pumping your gas. And that's because in most vehicles, the ramp is on the same side that the gas pump is on, so you can't let the ramp out. And there's federal law that requires service for a person with a disability, but it is truly outdated. It says honk your horn 2 times, and someone will come from the service station to assist you.
Is that the Americans with Disabilities Act you're
That
talking about?
is
Okay.
correct, yeah. And that doesn't work. In these days and times, I did it just this morning at a Shell station on I-20, and I honked my horn twice, 5 times, and no one even looked my way. Not even the strangers, you know. And so this is needed for persons with disabilities. And not only that, when you're talking about military, they could be, that could fall into those that have served us. But what about the elderly or seniors who can drive but they can barely walk? You know, so it would serve a major purpose for this state to be able to service those folk in a way that they don't have to go up and honk their horn.
Okay. Are there questions? Let me ask you a couple. I was approached by some people in the industry, and Commissioner Black from the Agriculture Department mentioned that part of what your bill did, and this will be at lines 24 to 26, was to require him, the Commissioner of Agriculture, to put a decal or a sticker on all these gasoline pumps. They have to go inspect them periodically anyway, so he said it wouldn't be an imposition for him to do that. That would include, you know, some wording, who to call for help, and put a phone number in, et cetera, of what
And
they
I brought a
wanted.
few of them with me. It just,
Okay, I'm gonna ask my Vice Chairman to hand you a copy of what Commissioner Gary Black gave me today. He is basically, and we'll look at these that you handed us.
yeah,
He's-
that's just a smaller version.
All right, he has modified it, and you can see there at the bottom, and this, by the way, is in everybody's file that's been handed around. It has a place for your telephone number. You see that at the very bottom?
Right.
Okay, that's what he's added for store assistance call, and they can fill in the phone number of the store. So instead of beeping your horn, you could just call that number
In the
for
store.
somebody to come out. Do you feel like that would address your concerns, or
I
that's what
believe
you're
it
trying to
would.
do?
I believe it would, as long as they answer the phone, you know.
Right. Well, if they want to sell you some gas, they better. Now, so, right, and if they didn't have 2 people on duty, even your bill,
Correct.
they don't have to send
They
one
don't have
out.
to, right. We would have to move on to another station.
Right.
Yeah.
So, what he's suggesting, and I want to encourage you to see if this will address your concerns, because I get what you're saying about, you know, beeping the horn. Heck, there could be all kind of people beeping their horns out there. But if the commissioner will put these on the pumps within the next few months, are you willing to wait and let's see if that works on a voluntary basis before adding additional requirements? Because I'm thinking that we might have a solution for you here that addresses your
As
concern.
long as we accomplish the same thing,
Okay.
I think that's what we're saying.
I'll tell you what I'm going to ask you to do, and if you want to vote, then we'll deal with that in our next meeting. But I would encourage you to, let's see if this will work. I really applaud Commissioner Black for voluntarily doing this to address you without, you know, making everything regulatory. And let's give this 6 months and see if if the industry embraces it. They're going to have this sticker on their pumps now, because he's going to put them on when he re-inspects those pumps, and it's going to be optional for them to fill in that phone number if they want to encourage, you know, customers that struggle with disabilities. If that doesn't work, your bill is still pending. We're a biennial, it's a 2-year project, and we can come back here. It'll still be in this committee, and we'll reconsider if that suits you. I'm trying to accommodate you without, you know.
Well, I've spoken to 2 of the convenience store operators, lobbyists, I guess you could say. Angela that represents about 1/3 of the convenience stores. She's here today.
Yeah, let me get Angela on here. Angela, if you're out there in the hall, Angela Holland, come in. I know you were here to speak the other day. Would like to hear the perspectives of the convenience stores.
And I think
How you are?
Commissioner Black is still here, too.
Okay, fantastic. Angela, tell us your views on this legislation. If you've had a chance to, you had signed up for it the other day, that we're on House Bill 437. Representative Howard.
Yes, sir. So we've worked with, I'm Angela Holland with the Georgia Association of Convenience Stores, and we represent roughly about a third of the stores in the state. We've worked with Representative Howard on language in this bill for 3 years. The first year he ran it as a resolution, and we embraced that at our organization. Our board members supported it. We actually have a sticker developed, and we have members that use it.
Great. I don't know if
I did
Commissioner
see
Black's-
that from Commissioner
And this has a
Black, and-
place where you can put your number.
Absolutely, and
Okay.
we really appreciate him coming to the table with something that we think will work. Here's,
Right.
we know the 9th hour with 3 days left of legislative
Right.
session.
You think your organization and members will be willing to do this voluntarily once he provides these stickers to assist our
Absolutely,
disabled
because the
community?
sticker's going to be there, right? So
Fantastic.
he's going to bring those
He's gonna
stickers
bring
out.
it
They
to-
will be in the.
All right.
And the fact that it is in color, I think the version that I saw using
Yeah.
the universal blue, I think is
Right.
a really good option for us right now.
All right, see how we can solve problems quicker than all those 16 consulting people couldn't get it together, and we did it in 10 minutes. Thank you for being here, and thank you for the good-heartedness of your organization. And
Absolutely.
Representative Howard, it's been a pleasure to meet you,
Well, same here.
and I hope this accommodates you and those other folks in need in getting your gasoline.
Well, thank you, and we look
Thank you.
forward to it.
All right.
Thank you.
Oh, I got the minority leader has a question. Oh, boy, she was holding back here for a couple of...
It's just a simple question. With, what would you use to write that number in that would not be affected by the rain or the weather?
It should be able to take a Sharpie marker on it because those are weatherproof. Those are a weatherproof sticker that's out there. And if I'm not mistaken, they're on there for about 18 months.
Okay.
I know that I think they try to get to them every year, but I think they replace those every 18 months.
Sharpie eventually wears off. And what kind of training will the convenience stores, will you alert them that they have to do this and with this, along with this sticker?
Well, it'll still be a voluntary thing with that sticker.
That's, we're gonna try to see how it
Volunteer.
works.
That's
How
not good
often
enough.
does
But
the
they-
Department of Agriculture put new stickers on? Don't they do it every time they inspect, or
They do, and I don't
Okay.
know if it's 12 or 18 months, but it's
quick,
somewhere in that
before
ballpark.
before the ink goes dry though, right, or fades?
Yes.
Senator Harbison.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to follow up one thing, two things. In order to make anything.
Lean into that number 4 there, the
Yes, sir.
Senator Brett has it.
Number
5 be
Sir.
good, okay.
Yes, sir, thank you very much. One of the things that I thought about, it takes a long time to sort of ramp people up and educate them about an assistance problem or some ADA acts or something like that, and I was just wondering, is there a voluntary kind of advertisement between the Agriculture Department and yourselves to make sure people know that help is there? And number 2, make it large enough so they can read it from the car, because they may be visually impaired somewhat as well. Not while they're driving necessarily, but that could possibly be the case. But simply, you really have to advertise things like that in order for it to be somewhat effective.
You do, yes, sir. And we have done that for the last 3 years. So we developed a sticker 3 years ago. We've promoted that with our organization. We've had Representative Howard speak at our convention. And it's been one of those things we've really tried to promote within our industry. And there is, and I've made a commitment to Representative Howard to work with him. There is an app that's been developed. It's called Fuel Service, and it is for disabled individuals to use. You can go in there, put in the, you list all your information, you put in there the type of gas you want, and then you hit OK, and it will populate a list of stores that are in your area. Right now, the closest store to me in Atlanta would be in Orlando. So it's not widely used right now in our area, but I've made a commitment to reach out to that company and to bring them into the Atlanta market. It is also being widely used by Shell stations, and so I've reached out to some of our board members that have Shell stations that have made a commitment to use that as well. So that app, once you get within 30 minutes of that store, will allow you to call that store and to make sure there is someone available at that time to pump your gas. So I think between promoting the sticker that Gary Black, and I will say a sticker that Gary Black puts on there is going to be much less picked at and picked off than any other sticker. So I think those will be on there for the
Thank
full
you.
year. And
Senator Redd has a question, and
Yes.
we're going to move on.
Yes, sir.
I'm sure that you have some sort of training for the personnel for this program. Well, the reason I asked is because one evening, the senator and I were leaving Luke's Lounge, and I pulled in a convenience station and honked twice at a female attendant. She came over and slapped me. You know.
All right, okay, fine.
I'll pass, Mr. Chairman, but this whole thing about the visual impairment reminds me of my question that I've always wondered is, why do they have Braille on the drive-through tellers at the bank?
Is this a joke? Go ahead and hit us with the punchline. Senator Mullins, you know the punchline of that one? Make one up by tomorrow. You probably come up with something. We'll get you on that.
All right.
All right, thanks.
Commissioner Black has acknowledged that he's willing to come to stations across the state and promote it.
Fantastic.
To Senator Harbison's question.
Okay.
To sort of give some newsworthy time to it.
That's great.
So I think that would be
All right.
one way to get the word out.
Along with
Yes,
the
ma'am, we
convenience
will.
We
stores.
will.
All right. That's great. And,
You can go.
All right, we appreciate you, and Angela, will you help Representative about that door,
will.
please? And we will,
Representative, thank you for that bill, Mr. Chairman. Thank you very
I
much.
think it's going to be good for all of us. Good for Georgia. All right, I got one other. We're out of time. I'm missing tax cutting time down there in finance. I'm going to have to get to if y'all want to save money on your taxes. We had next on the list House Bill 601. You may remember Chairman Stevens, Ron Stevens, presented this to us the other day. It was about the drug Epidiolex. That is for pediatric seizures. It's a CBD oil, THC oil type product. It actually has a .001 level in it of THC oil, but it has gotten FDA approval. The purpose of the bill, as they described it, was to move that medication from a Schedule 5 substance. The original bill moved it from Schedule 5 just to an unscheduled drug. This committee sub does put it as a scheduled drug. It's called, just it defines it as a dangerous drug, which has a little bit more control than a scheduled drug. It still makes it easier for it to be prescribed by physicians and to be possessed by folks suffering from those conditions. The other thing is we had caught in Representative Peake's original legislation that he described to Senator Huffstetler, they intended it to be 0.05% concentration of THC oil. Instead, the Scrivener's error had 5%. We did a survey of all the other states and what their levels are and found that the vast majority of them are under 1%. In fact, the federal level, I'm looking for my notes here, is on that is 0.08%. So I don't think there are any medications out there at this time that have anywhere close to that concentration level of 5%. But I have a number of states. The highest I could find here was Iowa had to be less than 3%. Idaho had 0.3%. Florida, which is sort of the leader in this medical cannabis, has below 0.8%. I found that Mississippi has 0.5%, Missouri has 0.3%, Oklahoma has 0.3%, North Carolina had 0.9%, South Carolina had 0.9%, Tennessee had 0.9%, Texas had 0.5%, and then Utah had 0.3%. So kind of went through the alphabet of all the states there. Again, Wyoming had 0.3%. This changes it to 1%, which would put us higher than almost anybody except a couple of states that had the 3% level. So that's in the committee sub. Graham Thompson wants to speak to this. I told him we would get it before the committee today so they can understand and we could get feedback from the Epidiolex people. Does this satisfy their concern to move their medication from Schedule 5 to the dangerous drug category that's not scheduled? And if you could talk for about 2 minutes, Graham, then we're not going to take action on the bill today.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
But we're going to try to have this meeting tomorrow afternoon, and you would more than likely be on that agenda.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Graham Thompson with the Thompson Victor Group. One of our clients is Greenwich Biosciences, which has the first FDA-approved cannabis-derived prescription drug, Epidiolex, as Senator Cowser alluded to. So we have just right around 850 patients in Georgia. As was mentioned, these are children with pediatric seizures, epilepsy, and most of them are under the care of pediatric neurologists down at the Children's Healthcare of Atlanta. So this is a prescription medicine. The goal of this legislation is to say drugs or prescription medicines that have gone through the rigor of FDA approval should not automatically default to Schedule I designation in the state of Georgia. Schedule I drugs are cocaine, heroin, LSD, drugs that have no medical value and high potential for abuse. So a drug that has gone through the rigorous review of FDA approval, double-blind placebos, start with a very small patient population and grow that over many years under clinical trials, and then finally get FDA approval. So just a most recent example, certainly want everybody to get vaccinated, but the COVID-19 vaccines are only authorized under emergency use. They're not actually FDA approved, so that shows you the rigor of the FDA approval process. So the bill is 25 words, just ensuring that those therapies that have gone through the rigor of FDA approval do not automatically default to Schedule I, because doctors can't write prescriptions and patients can't access therapies in Schedule I. So Greenwich Biosciences and Epidiolex and potentially future therapies, we will absolutely go through the medical lane of FDA approval. These are not products that you see at CVS or the Golf Pro Shop, CBDs. These are prescription drugs. And so really appreciate your help here to make sure patients can access essential therapies once they are approved after that rigorous review at FDA. So thank you, Chairman Cowser.
Thank you so much for being with us today. All right, with that, we will be adjourned. Like I mentioned, we do have a time scheduled for 2 o'clock tomorrow, depending on the directions from the big bosses of the Senate. I'll see what we might be able to hear tomorrow. If we're not able to have things ready by then, it's a possibility we could meet on Thursday, depending on what time we gavel in. But we're only down to about 3 bills left we hadn't acted on, came over from the House, so we're working through them as rapidly as we can. Thank all of you for your attendance. It's been exceptional this entire session, and with that, we are adjourned.